I don't know who real world thinks they can intimidate me by saying that, implying that I'm putting my international reputation on the line in my relationships with journalistic and leader authorities by not going along with the popular notion that Sherilla McKenzie was properly convicted and sentenced. I'll address this again. No matter how many images you show me of her as a tormented youth, tattooed, angry, crazed, I will never be able to shake the fact that it looks to me like she was targeted and used in a behavioral modification project. That's what the evidence says. Now, the adversary who tortured me set me up with some sex for politics. And these turned into symbolic acts of the Green Party, defending the people who've been implicated as having poisoned Mackenzie Sherilla. I asked the judge to look at the evidence. I realized that Ohio produces some hardcore, and that Mackenzie Sherilla was portraying herself as hardcore. It became very deadly. This is not itself proof that what I said is wrong. If she was a victim of neurobehavioral tampering, it would alter her personality. Now, you would argue that there's so many issues involved in drugs that involve voluntary ingestion of these hallucinatory chemicals, that we don't dare be lenient about them, and the victims are their own fault and to blame for their victimization. And that America's drug problem is proof of America's inability to mature and grow into a responsible community. There's a lot to all of that. The evidence, however, shows that the targeting and special formulas that went into the suicidal ideations and emotional breakdown of the person in question originated with brutal homicidal prison authorities capable of manufacturing such a drug. I can't help but wonder why that isn't being considered rather than the politics involved. I don't care to be politicized for expressing my concern about the evidence of state-engineered poison craft for the purposes of making a political statement. Now, you want to draw me into this. You want me to say, I see myself in her because I am like her. Well, that's true. I was poisoned by the prison authorities, and I've gone through hell trying to recover. And that hell has been aggravated by people who claim that I am to blame for the problem. In other words, they poisoned me because they think it's right and proper that somebody who gets drawn into the Venus flytrap of the 60s should die. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that about myself. And the judge doesn't even believe that about Mackenzie. She wasn't sentenced to the death penalty. So we agree about one thing. People who are drawn into the counterculture do not deserve to be killed. They deserve to be rehabilitated. The question for me is, what was the nature of Michaela Sherenzi's personality change? Was it to force this question before the international community? Because there's lots of AIDS victims, and they've been delaying saying anything about the script and its origins so they can make it look like I deserved it. they've mongered a Taliban of victims who say that sex is symbolic because sex has different properties and different obligations and different attitudes and values attached to it in different cultures. So they make it like a world symposium. And that was planned. That's what they planned to do all along. And they kept it from me as a child. You know, you have to make your decision about that eventually. It's absurd. If you look at the record, I tried to warn people. I was shut down. I tried to investigate. I was shut down. Now, on the behalf of the people we turned up, they're letting them crucify a girl in Ohio because they got her to blow her fuse with these drugs. I don't think it's rational. I think the decision is irrational. I think under the circumstances, Mackenzie Shirella should be seen as somebody who was experimented on. And the experiment worked. It got her to blow her fuses. And that's the way I see it. And if you come to me and say, well, Putin won't let you have communion believers with autographs, so just well, that's fine with me. That's perfectly okay. I'm going to sit here and cheer Lavrov's rhetoric to a point. But I don't like the United States in these areas like the Middle East wreaking havoc any more than I like Russia and the Ukraine wreaking havoc. So you can make the comparison, and that's neat. But it doesn't help me sleep. It makes me lose sleep. We need leaderships that can conform to an international rehabilitation and recovery program. We need to recover from the ideological 50s and the sci-fi theater about places like North Korea that demonize perfectly sensible workers and toilers trying to recover from World War II. We have to do something about Hollywood's crazes. And we can't just take somebody like Mackenzie Shirella and depict her as like the next Stephen King. Does he call them protagonists or antagonists? She's a peer, and she's been abandoned by her peers. When I see all the thumbs up at her conviction, it makes me furious. She was a minor who was tampered with, for God's sakes. And she was abandoned by her peers. And it was done for a hybrid purpose. And now they say, you won't get Camille's autograph, or we'll take you out and make you into a sacrifice to pleasure Yoko Ono's yang sadism. Because she's only half good, her other half is evil. Don't you know her mysteryism? She hates you, she loves you, she loves you. I'm not arguing anything to defend myself. I'm arguing to defend Mackenzie Shirella. She's entitled to a fair trial that takes into consideration all the evidence. And if she's found innocent or guilty on lesser charges, because of testimony pertaining to how she was mistreated and abused, tortured, hypnotized, and car bombed psychologically, then it's the nature of rehabilitation processes and psychiatry to make sure that she recovers in a way that is fashioned to make sure that she stays well and understands what happened. And that's going to be very difficult to do with people blowing her fuses again and again and again and again, when prison psychology science was behind the problem in the first place, from judging from the evidence that I have seen and the experience that I have. And if that's a class action, it certainly should be considered. A lot of people would have benefited from timely warning during the 80s crisis of the spread of AIDS. Instead, Amanda Harcourt sent me a letter. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Is this whole that's greater than the sum of its parts the one that's coming and blaming the United States and Africa's going to come and punish you because we're all so angry? Is that what's going on with these symbolic sex capers from CMU Drama Club, which are the people who pulled this business on Mackenzie Shirella so they could add that story to their drama club? It looks to me like two sides organized to contradict the true happening of this poison in favor of some sort of sociological tell-all about what happened that takes no consideration of the evidence or the facts. The only reason those letters still exist is because of the hard work I did getting them on microfilm at Carnegie Mellon University, which is some small reason to thank CMU. It's a small reason to thank the media to give me a chance to defend Mackenzie Shirilla. She's entitled to a defense, and I have been happy to provide her a defense. And I have nothing against the men who lost their lives. I'm sorry. They were all victims of that crash.